Confidence Man are back with 3am, La La La, and I am excited because Confidence Man is one of the most fun dance pop groups out there at the moment. They just know how to have a good time, not really take themselves too seriously. They're quirky, they're tongue-in-cheek, they know how to display a really fun, silly sense of humor while also maintaining really like high quality dance pop tunes. It's one of those weird cases for me where I'm just sort of scratching my beard. I'm thinking, why aren't they bigger? Like, why isn't a song from any of their albums taken off by now? Why hasn't any of their loose sort of one-off singles that don't make it onto albums? Because they got quite a few of those took off by now. Sure, you'll hear them on like the B tier list of Radio 1. You know, they'll pop up a few times a day when they've got a new album out, when they've got a new song out. They do tend to promote Confidence Man over on Radio 1, and that's a pretty big station. So it makes it to many people's ears, and yet they just don't really stick the landing and land in the charts. It's weird. It's weird. It's an odd little thing that I can never explain, but this is how it is. I'm always like this with music. I'm always like, this needs to be more popular. This time around, though, I don't think they're quite as tongue-in-cheek. They're not quite as silly or quirky with their humor. They're just really going all out, balls to the wall, classic dance pop, house-inspired music, really. Just straight up fist-pumping bangers from start to end. The singles in isolation did, of course, sound good. I enjoyed them, but I wasn't entirely sure how it would end up coming together on the album, because I was like, okay, these are really high-energy, propulsive, just bangers. Are they going to do that the whole way through? Because they've got bangers on all their albums. You know, Feels Like a Different Thing from Tilt was an absolute rager for me. Love that track. But it wasn't like the entire album ended up sounding like that. So I was kind of left wondering, how are we going to come together for this album? And yeah, pretty much just taking the classic sound from the late 80s in places, from the 90s, of course, a bit of 2000s as well. Just that propulsive energy, that dance pop classic sound, and just really keeping it that the whole way through. It's a really, really high energy fun album. Who knows what you'll find teases you into the album, though. It's not straight up high energy straight away. They kind of save that for Can't Lose You, which you then get a bit more of the rage. But yeah, this track actually has a bit more of a softer, pillowy sound to it. I really like the rhythm, I really like the synths. It all really, really sounds really nice and sweet. And the way her voice kind of has this echo effect on it as well, just really makes you feel like you're floating in the clouds on this one. This is a really, really great track. Actually might end up becoming a bit of an underrated one on the album, because it is the intro, and maybe it's not quite as in your face and as just, you know, bombastic as perhaps some of the other ones are, but I still think this is an absolute highlight. Can't Lose You, of course, is the smash hit really of this album. Just that chorus hitting in and those vocals, I can't lose you, again, just really, really classic sounds of that kind of classic dance pop house era. The vocals actually on the verses, the male vocals, which I'm sometimes a little bit about when it comes to Confidence Man. I just really like Janet's voice a lot, but I will say sound pretty good. No hate on Sugar Bones, of course. I just think sometimes his voice carries a bit of a cheese to it. Maybe it still lands a little bit like that on this track, but I think maybe the vibe they're going for, the kind of more techno, you know, fist pumping sound, just maybe makes him fit into the mix a little bit better. Just on other tracks in the past, I've just always never been too keen on how he sounds. But yeah, the way this track I think is going for a bit more of that classic techno sound probably makes him fit nicely in, because you'd have 90s tracks with a guy that would come on the track like this. Do you remember that viral TikTok track? I cannot remember for the life of me, but it was all just like a whole big joke and a bit of a parody. And the video was kind of like pulling from that era. I feel like Confidence Man have always had that vibe to them. I've kind of for the life of me remember that name. But anyway, it was a viral little thing for a bit. It was a really funny little video. Yeah, Confidence Man kind of have that about them, you know, pulling from that 90s classic sound, Eurodance sort of thing. Speaking of Sugar Bones, though, his vocals do appear on the track Holiday, which is one of their biggest songs, and Control, The synths on this track sound a lot like the synths on Holiday. I was pretty surprised how similar they sound. The song itself kind of takes a bit of a different direction, but yeah, I was a bit surprised at the similarities there. Gotta give him his props for Sicko though. What the hell is this? This does not sound like anything they've ever done. One of the most unique songs in their entire catalogue, without a shadow of a doubt, right? But gotta say that this 9 Inch Nails vibe going on here is absolutely like jaw-dropping. I was so shocked and stunned at this popping up on a Confidence Man album. Just honestly, listen to this. Imagine anything popping up on the Downward Spiral and just having a bit more of that kind of like pop flavour to it. And it would fit. Like, it really does. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. I'm all for it though. I think it's really cool. I think it's a really unique sound for the band, and it also kind of has some like baggy sounds kind of coming through as well, like Stone Roses vibes coming through some of the instrumental passages. Like, combining those two worlds and getting this is just so strange. But yeah, I'm all for them trying this really odd detour, even if it doesn't necessarily fit the actual vibe of the album overall, but it still works as its own individual song. Really the only detour on the album, I would say. The rest of the album kind of follows that classic sound, but pulling from different eras of it, I would say. For example, Real Move Touch, pulling from that kind of late 80s like hip house sound, the early sounds of it, and it really does make you sound like you're just entering like some kind of fitness class, and you've got those really classic sort of 80s colourful latex suits, and everyone's just smiling and jiving. Very much got that vibe to it. Very cool to hear that influence coming through on a track from 2024 though. But yeah, just kind of that Chicago house sound that was birthed out of the 80s. Bit of a hip-hop flair to it coming through a little bit as well. Really very much just lands on this track. But I do have to mention the highlight of the album for me, which is Janet. I think Janet is just as high energy and as effective as you could get with what they were trying to do on this album. Like, this entire album is just kind of captured by this one song. The aesthetic, the vibe, the eras they're pulling from. Janet is just that bitch. The clashing synth sounds just come together in such a jarring way. It's so sharp in how it sounds. And then the way it kind of like erupts and climaxes with like, it's a very simple little vocal riff, but it just works so brilliantly. The whole track is just such an excellent piece of dance music. I think it's got to be a year-end highlight for me, this song. Like, it really is just one of those moments where I'm like, damn, they nailed the assignment. They were going for this sound, and they just got it right with this track. Also have to give them props to So True, which I think is maybe a bit of a sleeper hit on this album, particularly in the UK. I think this one could really do well. I've said that already at the start of this video, haven't I, where I said these guys should be bigger than they are. But particularly with this track that I think could be a bit of a sleeper hit is the way it kind of has that two-step sound to the beat. Very much a commonplace sound in the UK. Wouldn't be surprised if they're pulling influence from that kind of, again, early 2000s two-step era. And I just think if you soften the vocals and gave, you know, Janet a bit more of like a sugary princess voice, you wouldn't be that far away from a Pink Pantheress song. Like, seriously, if you listen to this track, the way the beat kind of floats and it kind of has a bit more of like a dreamy sound, you're not a million miles away from Pink Pantheress. I mean, even the way she says so true, that softy, whispery voice, it's kind of all there. I don't know, I think there's definitely that kind of, again, classic inspiration coming through on this track that could just resonate with an audience that I think they know exactly who they're tapping into. So yeah, definitely for me, another highlight on this album. Again, a bit of a sleeper hit, and overall just a really strong album. I haven't mentioned every track, but I think for the vast majority of this album, you're kind of getting a very similar vibe for the most part. Some of the ones that I mentioned are maybe slight outliers, like Sicko and So True, yada yada yada. But yeah, for the most part, that really great, just high propulsive Eurodance, Euro pop, dance, techno, house sound from previous decades is just shining through with the bags of personality that you get from Confidence Man tracks, whether it's the lyrics that are tongue-in-cheek, or whether it's the vocals that are just really, really enjoyable and likable. Like, it's so hard not to like Janet as a vocalist. That said, it loses a little bit of that comic value for me. Like, there isn't really one track that had me laughing in the same way that maybe some of their other tracks have in the past. You know, like Angry Girl, that song is just hilarious. That personality, that amount of personality isn't quite creeping into this album. Do they have to do that on every album? No, they don't have to do it on every album. But yeah, I don't know if they've less necessarily kept a part of themselves for this album that I think was actually worth keeping. Not to say that it's disappeared forever, but just for this particular album, you don't really have that same sort of tongue-in-cheek comic value that you get with Confidence Man in previous albums. I also do want to point out that the final track is really up there, one of their weakest songs ever. Like, I was really disappointed that this album ended in that way. Like, I'm on such a high, and then you end on that and it's just this la la la. Like, it's just not really enjoyable. It sounds really basic, and I'm not against the idea of la la la's in songs, but just the way it sounds and the fact that you hit like the 3:50 mark and it kind of feels like the song's coming to an end, and then the beat kind of comes back in, and then you've got like another 1:30 left of the song. I just think the song easily could have ended there. It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really keep me that invested. I'm just not really thinking that there's much of a hook on this track with other tracks on this album and in their discography too. Like, seriously, this isn't as strong or as striking or as personality driven as their other songs. It's not bad. I'm not trying to hate on it. I don't think it's a bad song, but it's pretty meh. Like, I just think as a closer, I don't know, man, this didn't really leave me full of joy, really. I think, though, that is pretty much on par with their other work. I would say a 7.5 out of 10. It's not quite an 8, but this is the thing with Confidence Man. I feel like I really like them and I have such a love for them as a band, but they always like slightly fall short of putting out an album that I would say I love. I think they have very good albums, and I think when you watch them live and they capture that essence in a live show and the choreography and the performance of it all, you fall in love with them easily. You fall in love with them within the first song. Like, you just are so like just engrossed in the stage presence of these two. They really are fantastic. Obviously there are other members, but the two main, Sugar Bones and Janet Planet, the two main ones are just so like magnetic. They're so full of charisma, and the songs, they play all of their best songs too, so you're just absolutely locked in for the performance. They're so fun, so high energy, and that's when you really come to realize how fantastic they are, I think. And yeah, the albums are really good too, but for this one, a few things that kind of don't quite live up to maybe being a great album, but still, it's like splitting hairs. It's very good. It's probably going to make my year-end list, to be honest with you. It'll be lower down in the year-end list somewhere. But yeah, over-explaining my thoughts there maybe. I think it's still a very good album. The score is irrelevant, I suppose. Let me know your thoughts though. Do you think this is a good album? Do you think it's great? Hopefully you've clicked this video though, because I know they're not the most famous band in the world, but I would love to see people checking them out, checking out what I think here, and let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Patreon if you're feeling really generous. Have a good day. Goodbye.